The following broadcast is brought to you in association by XP Coffee Company. XP Coffee Company is the fresh brewed coffee made for gamers by gamers. Get amazing flavors like Choco Loco in 8, 12, or 16-ounce bags, or level up and get Illusion, Isolation, Nightmare, or the Majestic Throne blends in light, medium, or dark roast in whole bean, coarse French press, drip, or fine espresso in 12-ounce, 16-ounce, or 2-pound bags. Wow! Shipping worldwide. If you're in the U.S., go to usa.xpcoffee.co. If you're in Europe or in the U.K., go to www.xpcoffee.co. XP Coffee Company, for gamers, by gamers. Welcome all you Tanimals to another edition of the Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media. We've got kind of a special edition of the Tanndemonium Sports Show tonight. It's an episode that Jackson and I are both very, very excited to have. It's not going to be our usual episode. I'm going to put that out there right now. We're still going to be talking some of the most relevant sports stories that have been going on in the last week. However, this might be an uncomfortable one for some of you, but you know what? That's a good thing, because sometimes to get real progress, you need to get uncomfortable. You know, that's why they say if you're nervous giving a speech, picture everybody in their drawers. Am I right, Jackson Law?
Yeah, I mean, I tend not to do that because I feel like I would just get too distracted.
Yeah, depending on who you see.
but yeah, no, they're conversations that definitely need to be had. You know, they're conversations that should have been had a long time ago, but they didn't happen a long time ago, so they're still going on today. So it's time to buckle up, man up, and talk about them.
Right, and we've got a very, very special guest with us today. Jackson Law, would you like to, because this individual is someone that you hold in very, very high regard, and you even told me off camera before we even got started that this individual got your vote, got your civic endorsement. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guest?
He did. So our special guest today is he formerly was running for senator in the most recent election. He did not win. Again, unfortunately from my end, yes, I am a supporter of this guy. And when I've heard him speak before, it was the first time I actually ever heard of him. It was a PBS, or it was like a PBS Arkansas, I think it was, where he was supposed to be debating Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas, but Mr. Cotton did not show up. He would rather appear on Fox News and was somewhere else entirely. So I got to hear this gentleman speak, pretty much have the floor for himself. Loved every word that he said. And for someone like me that didn't know exactly, what I was looking for, politically speaking, he seemed to hit every nail on the head for me as an individual. So without further ado, I'll introduce our guest. He is Mr. Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. of my home state of Arkansas. Mr. Harrington, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank y'all for having me on the show.
And that's why Jackson Law is the best co-host in the business. Now that is an intro. That was an intro.
A heck of an introduction right there.
It's all truth. I mean every word that I say, and everything.
I need to send him a couple of Bitcoins for
that. Nice. And of course, in our booth tonight, Bridget 12 Rounds is not available. She's taking care of some family matters. So shout out to Bridget. But we've got Miss Courtney Plumer with us tonight in the producer's booth, and she'll come on and talk with us as well. Courtney's off camera at the moment, but you guys will be hearing from her because she's got some stuff to say, and she's done a decent job subbing in for Bridget. So want to
done a great job.
Absolutely send a shout out and thanks to Courtney as well. But as I said, Mr. Harrington, we're gonna have some uncomfortable conversations. We're gonna have some conversations about certain things, because one thing, and I know that you can attest to this because you've heard it said as well, same as I have. And Jackson, I know you've heard it said, is you get a lot of people that aren't necessarily in the understanding of the plight of people in color in sports. And one of the first things that so many of these people want to say and this is me giving them the benefit of the doubt. They don't seem to understand. They always say, well, why do you have to bring race into it? Why does everything have to be about race? And what they fail to understand is it is. It just is. It's not something that we bring in. It's just what it is. And one of the topics that we wanted to discuss with you, and you had even mentioned to Jackson that it's something that you can definitely, get behind, something that you would want to discuss. And that is college athletes being paid. Now, part of the reason why those of us who are gamers, especially sports gamers, lost our NCAA series games, me as well, was due to the lawsuit from Ed O'Bannon versus the NCAA. Ed O'Bannon, for the very, very young, i.e. Courtney, that don't know, Ed O'Bannon and his brother Charles were among the star players of the UCLA Bruins. I believe it was their last national championship back in the early mid-90s. And the O'Bannon brothers, but Ed especially, and I know, Mr. Harrington, you remember this, Ed basically said, how's the NCAA and in UCLA especially going to make all this money off my name and off my likeness, and I'm getting nothing? And, what are some of your thoughts on college athletes being paid?
Well, the very first conversation, I remember it clear as day. I mean, like it was just yesterday. Was with my uncle, who was talking about this subject here, and this conversation really influenced my perspective on it. He mentioned the name Chris Webber, and I'm not sure if this story is literally about Chris Webber or not, but this could be for any college athlete, any scholar athlete. He said he was looking for change somewhere to go buy him a couple of, McDoubles or whatever. And he walked past this sports outlet store, and there his jersey was with his name on it for sale. And, however much they were selling them for, I'm sure he could use that money to go find himself something to eat. And, somebody might say, well, why don't you go eat in the cafeteria? Or sometimes, the cafeteria food is worse than prison food, especially at a school that I went to. It was bad. Food was bad.
And the meal plans get real expensive. And sometimes for some of these athletes, their scholarships don't include meal plans.
Yes.
And cafeteria food, for anyone who's had relatives in the hospital, cafeteria food is expensive. It's real expensive. I mean, I worked security on a college campus of a Division III school. And when I saw how much they were charging people, I'm like, really? Y'all charging Red Lobster like money, and this is definitely like McWho's-Its.
If you're eating, breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the cafeteria, and it's $9 or $10 every time you go swipe the card or whatever, $30 a day, 7 days a week, 4 weeks a month, or however long you're there, that stacks up a lot.
It really does.
And if you don't have, that type of, income coming in, this is the reason why I didn't play college football. I had an opportunity to do it, but I didn't do it because I knew that you're going to have to eat, sleep, and do everything else football. I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. We go in and doing practice in the morning. Then I go to class. I get out of class. I go to practice again, get me something to eat. Then we go in and go watch videos. After I do some of the tutoring that I'm supposed to do. So my whole college life is engrossed with football. And just think of all the merchandise. Here I got, this Harding hat on, Division II. I think if I'm remembering correctly, Division II, these schools make a lot of money from sports, all the sports that they play. And I understand that they give their students scholarships, but, they could probably go a little further, when you think of just the large sum of money that is involved in college sports.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's not just even from the university's like the university giving them money either. In case if it doesn't sound like it, I fully support college athletes being able to monetize themselves, their name, image, and likeness, and use it however they want to. You have I couldn't find the tweet earlier, but recently with the NCAA tournament starting, you've seen a lot of players that are in the NCAA tournament. They are talking about the hashtag started to trend, hashtag not NCAA property. And it was NCAA athletes that were listing out problems with the system, with the college sports system. One of them being that there are other people that are at universities that can earn a living doing what they have a scholarship for. Someone that has a scholarship to say Arkansas State, which is, I got my master's from Arkansas State. So if you have someone on a music scholarship from Arkansas State, they can go join a band and then go out and tour the United States, and they can make money off of that while also being at Arkansas State on a scholarship. You have people that can sell their own art, and they could be maybe on an art scholarship or something of that sort, or get money specifically for their tuition. That way they still may have to pay some. It may not be a full ride, but they are still getting paid by the university for their skill set, which is essentially what is happening with athletes too. Athletes get the full ride, but they can't even, like you said with the story about Chris Webber, he's not getting anything, and the university's profiting off of his name, image, and likeness. They can't get a deal with like a local mom and pop store to, get a couple $100 just so that way they don't have to eat ramen, on the side at night. Because listen, even when I got out of athletics, 3 square meals a day sometimes isn't enough. I couldn't imagine being 6'4", 6'5", the peak of my physical fitness.
Yeah.
And like an elite athlete. Like, have you seen the pictures of DK Metcalf when he was at Ole Miss? When he was extremely jacked, it's there's no way that man can survive on 3 meals. There's no way he can survive on 3 meals a day. He's got to get food
he's got to get those calories. Yeah. I mean, I was a semi-pro football player, nowhere near a finely tuned athlete like some of these guys. But even as a semi-pro football player, I had to have at least 5 meals a day because you're burning so many calories and expanding so much energy. By the time you are done with practice, if you really work your ass off in practice, at least for me, I was lightheaded. I'm like, oh man, I couldn't even think straight. It's like, man, I got to get some food in me. I would stop at the grocery store near the field and get a bag of Doritos just so I could put something in me until I could get home to cook. And granted, I was working a full-time job that I had the money to do that. I barely had the money to do it, but I made it work. Some of these guys, some of these kids, they can't work full-time jobs. I believe it's something in the scholarship with the NCAA. They can't work a full-time job. How are they going to have time to work a full-time job between the practices, the school, the tutoring, the video, the video sessions? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, especially, if you want to try to push 3 or 4 45 plates, you need some energy to be able to do that. And of course, you know what I mean by plates of their bench pressing, 315, 400 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a whole lot of energy to keep that up.
You trying to sit there, you trying to squat, and when you get, you and I both know, man, when you get in the weight room, it get real competitive, man. Not all you squatting, man. I got this. Come on now. Come on, Rook. What you got? Rook? Come on. Come on now. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. But when you look at it, I believe, wasn't it? It was Cam Newton, I believe it was, that got into some trouble back when he was at Auburn over getting money. I think was it tattoos or whatnot, or some sort of,
I can't remember. Session? I know. Yeah, Reggie Bush had to give back his Heisman because of a scandal, and just recently at Memphis, which is around my neck of the woods, just like an hour and a half away from me. James Wiseman, who was a top 5 pick in the NBA draft, played only a couple of games at the University of Memphis because Penny Hardaway, before he became the head coach, Penny Hardaway from Memphis, was a booster, and he gave money to Wiseman's family to help them move to Memphis, relocated his mom and I think a couple of other people that were part of the family to move them to Memphis because he wanted to live in Memphis so that way he could go to Memphis. He'd already committed to Memphis, but he wanted to bring his family along with him, and he wanted to go ahead and go to Memphis. So Penny Hardaway put up some money for them to go there, and the NCAA was like, no, you can't do that. So James Wiseman just said, okay, well then I'm not going to play along with the system. I'm just going to stop going to school and I'm gonna work out. And now he's a top 5 pick and he's balling in the NBA right now.
And Courtney just got this. Courtney just sent me this. According to the NCAA website, a Division I school makes just off of football. This isn't counting TV deals. This isn't counting bowl games. $7 million.
Ticket sales.
Just from ticket sales. Just from ticket sales.
And you know it's got to be even more for the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Floridas.
Oh,
because
my God, yes.
I had classes.
Teams,
I had classes with rugby players once, and they went down. It was a weekend where Arkansas State went to play Alabama in football. They got killed, obviously, but the Arkansas State rugby team also went down there because they were playing Alabama's rugby team, and they got to walk around. You know, they had some time. They walked around on campus. They toured the facilities and everything. And you know, I was asked him like, you know, what was it like down there? And he's like, they have a practice facility that's $250 million just for the football team. And only the football team uses it. And guess what's there? It's just a football field and a locker room. It's not even like rooms for them to study in. It's not, you know, places for them to hang out and stay. It's literally the football field, all of the practice equipment, and it's the indoor football facility. That's not including the outdoor football facility that they have. That's not including the facilities that they have for film study and all the other sessions that they have for each individual, like, coaches, because it's not just the head coach and the full team. It's the offensive line coach and the offensive lineman. It's the defensive back coach and the defensive lineman. All of them get their own individual rooms, individual screens, individual time in massive buildings. By the time it adds up, it's like $500 or $600 million. By the time you get through all that, that's how much that university has invested in that football team. And guess what? They put that investment in it because they make their money back. They get it back
easily, hand over fist. Now, here's some of the arguments against paying the athletes. And Ms. Harrington, I want to get a rebuttal from you. You know, just a quick rebuttal from you after I read these. Matter of fact, we'll go round table of a quick rebuttal, I guess. 1, paying players will raise tuition prices, including boarding, meals, etc. All right, we'll start with you, Ms. Harrington. What do you say to that? What do you say to that argument against it?
I'd like to know what's increasing tuition to begin with.
That's a whole different discussion as we're dealing with in Washington, looking for student loan forgiveness. I'm looking at that closely, but that's a real good question. So how is paying these? What else is raising these prices of tuition and everything? Like, what else would it be?
At Arkansas State, it's the new waterfall that they put in the football stadium.
Well, you gotta have. I mean,
the humanities.
You gotta have a waterfall.
The humanities department that I worked in at Arkansas State, you know, they lost half of their funding that year, but we got a waterfall. It looks pretty on ESPNU. The one time they have a game on ESPNU each year.
Well, Jackson, if you're going to be big time, you got to have a waterfall and you have to have a hot tub. You should know.
I mean, you know what they say, Sun Belt, Fun Belt.
All right. So the next one, it'll shift incentives for more student athletes away from studies and toward the quote unquote lottery ticket of the pro leagues. So
isn't that the way that is set up already?
Thank you. I mean, and then you look at basketball, at least with basketball, an 18-year-old kid plays one season. Then once he's 19, he can go to the NBA. NFL, for football, you got to stay in the college system for 3 years.
3 years.
For 3 years. You think their eyes aren't on that money?
Absolutely.
I think the only real sport that these kids aren't looking at the money is probably baseball, because those draft picks don't make a lot of money until they get called up to the major leagues. And that's at least another 4 to 5 years. But you look at football, basketball, and even hockey. Even hockey, that's a big payday they're looking at.
I'd speculate some of the other sports that, don't get as much money as, the big three sports, football, basketball, baseball. People probably in it more for the joy of the sport. I mean, playing football myself, I was in it for the joy of the sport. Whenever the joy was no longer there, I got out of it. But some sports like your archery, some of those fringe type sports that people don't pay that much attention to, shooting sports, even equestrian. Not too many people are involved in that unless you are part of that culture,
right,
that plays those sports, and you do it just for the heck of it and the culture that's associated with the sport.
And aren't some of those sports also, let's sort of break down socioeconomics in that. Some of these equestrian sports, like say diving or swimming or even hockey, these are some sports that you've actually got to have money already in your family to get involved in. So do they even, like, are scholarships even that important to them? Is something I would ask.
Just think about something like fencing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of equipment, expensive equipment involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too many. I think about some charitable sports organizations that try to reach inner city kids. It's usually boxing, basketball, things that don't have such a high barrier to entry in order to learn the sport and play it.
Right.
So, there is, you have to have the money in order to get involved in some of those sports, especially equestrian sports. Right. That horse has to be thoroughly trained, and you have to be trained yourself in order to have command of that horse.
Correct. Absolutely. And that was another argument that was in there. Cash-strapped colleges will divert funding to cover the salaries of students, so their money will be diverted away from the so-called Olympic sports like swimming, wrestling, gymnastics, fencing, or volleyball. Here's my thing. If you're worried about that, and now Jackson just mentioned that, Alabama has a $250 million plus practice area. So why not, if you're worried about that, why can't some of them share? Why can't, say, the track team jog around, practice in the football stadium when the team ain't using it? Why not? Like, I guess my whole point is, and this, because it's like in politics, when there's a will, there's a way to get it done. Am I right? I mean, if you really wanted to do it, or I don't, it baffles me how these people will hide behind crying poor to make sure that these young folks, these young men and women, because we just saw a couple of days ago how women's sports are completely ignored compared to men's sports, which is a crime in and of itself. But they'll do anything and everything to make sure that these young folks can't get, but they will make money off of their bodies. And you look at someone like, say, Willis McGahee, or I'm trying to think who else. There's so many athletes who they came in with all the hype and then they got hurt and then they couldn't play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're making so much money off of these young people, and they're and their only thing they get is, well, you're getting a free education. Well, and you're making really how many millions, and it's not free, and you're making how many millions of dollars off my blood, sweat, and tears.
Mm-hmm.
So
I find it an interesting argument because you know that there are work study programs and also assistant teaching while you're getting your master's degree. You can be a TA, and then you pursue a higher level of education if you want to go get your PhD. You know, college is all set up. I guess you could call it mind sports. So, what is the difference between someone who's getting a master's degree and getting paid to also help their professor? What's the difference between that and some of the athletes that are bringing in large amounts of money?
Right.
Just to try to make some form of equivalency here
Yeah.
in this whole arena of college, which a university is mainly for, you know, expanding your mind, increasing your knowledge and the depth of your knowledge. And so if you're paying people who also may have a scholarship for having high scores on their tests and being able to perform well, if you're going to pay them a full tuition scholarship and also pay them for covering for their professor when the needs arise, why can't you also do that for the student athlete?
Right. And it's not like these kids are asking to be paid $150 million a year. No. I mean, come on. Even if you're just paying them, say, $12,000 a year. I mean, matter of fact, since the talk is now, you know, we're trying to get to the minimum of $15 an hour minimum wage. So even if you're paying these kids $30,000 a year, why is that a problem? If you figure if a college football team has 53 people on it, 53 students on it, you pay each of them about, even if you want to do a pay scale, all right, so maybe the quarterback makes 35, your running back and your wide receivers make 33, your linemen make 30, your special teams guys make 20. You know, why is that so hard? That doesn't even come close to what the universities are taking in just from ticket sales.
Yeah, and you can take it a step further than that too. If you wanted, you can have a blanket, you know, whatever you're going to pay, you know, everyone. So let's, you know, we can keep it the
Football
hypothetical,
makes
like
30.
in between
Football
anywhere between 25, 30, but then also allow the students as individuals, as the players as individuals, to go out and allow them to accept contracts from outside where, you know, like I talked about earlier, like if I'm the star of a basketball team and there's, you know, like a local restaurant that approaches me and it's like, hey, you know, we're pushing for a new ad deal. We'd really like you to be a part of it. We'll pay you $2,000 for us to use your image and likeness for the entire season. If I thought it was a good deal and I needed the extra $2,000 and I wanted to do it, the students should be allowed to do that. And I've seen the argument against that where people have said, but then that's going to create like disproportionately, like students are going to go to some of the bigger schools and not to some of the smaller schools. They do that already because they win.
Yes.
Most people go to Alabama because they want to play for Nick Saban. They want to play on the best college football team so that way they can get to the NFL. That already happens.
They choose
Duke, Kentucky,
stars.
North Carolina. They choose everywhere.
They are stars, and they get they bypass guaranteed startership at, say, Pitt or Syracuse or UNLV to ride the bench at Alabama, at Clemson, at Auburn. Matter of fact, look at how many amazing student athletes go to play for Division I schools instead of going to HBCUs. They might have a better social experience at HBCUs, but they go to these other schools. Why? Because it gives them what they feel is a better opportunity. Yeah. And Courtney just came up with this a statistic. The percentage of students working in college averages, so 70% of college students, this is via Inside a Higher Education website. 70% of all enrolled college students are working. So they have to supplement. So why are these athletes any different? Why can't they do these things? Not to mention the fact that if a local pizza shop that caters to your college wants to get one of your star athletes and then give them a stipend of money, all that's going to do is help the local economy, which helps your school.
Mm-hmm.
So can we call this what it is then? The NCAA, and I've heard this said before, but you know what? I'm going to come right out and say it. You don't have to agree with me. You don't even have to comment. The NCAA is modern day slavery. Am I right or am I wrong? Or pass?
That's a hot take, brother.
But
I wouldn't pass it.
Because you're getting money. You're getting huge amounts of dollars on the blood, sweat, and tears of young people. And then, of course, they'll say, oh, well, if you get hurt, the university will, they'll take care of you. I'm sorry. I'm not going to give you a cookie and a pat on the back for you doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, no. The fact that anybody that wants to argue against student athletes being paid, then you might as well just tell me you're okay with slavery. You're okay with modern day slavery.
I'd like to say a little something.
Please.
There's a proverb and a curse. Of course, I'm a clergyman. So a lot of the things I say is going to sound a little preachy and have a little.
Well, that's why I've been trying to clean up my language a little bit.
Oh, you don't have to worry about that at all. I got a whole another story about my philosophy on that.
Fair enough.
There's this proverb about leading a blind person into a ditch. And it's pointed at the person who has eyes to see and the ability and the know-how to get around in this world. Then there's a person who's blind who doesn't have the ability to see, like the person who does have the ability to see. And that person chooses to lead the blind person into a ditch where they stumble and fall. And there's like a huge curse upon people that do that. Now, you can take it literally, but the meaning goes beyond that. If you have the knowledge and you have the know-how, and you come across a person that doesn't, you have a moral obligation to be forthright. You have a moral obligation to do it. Amen. And if you don't, there's going to come a time where it's going to come back and bite you. Call it karma, call it the universe, call it whatever. But, it's going to come for you.
I'm going to say this real quick before we take our first break. No matter who you worship, they don't like ugly.
Yes.
Whether it's God, whether it's karma, whether it's Gaia, no matter who it is, the one thing that all belief systems have, they don't like ugly. We're going to be back in just a moment. We're going to talk a little bit more about racism in sports. I don't understand what's with these sportscasters that seem to want to really throw negative shade toward young Black people, especially young Black women, standing up for themselves and standing up for what they believe in. Now, we talked about this a little bit last week where I kind of went crazy. And I went real nuts there. I went real nuts about this last week in case you missed it. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also going to talk about the NCAA. I'm not NCAA, the NAACP calling out the NFL for some hypocrisy. And I can't wait, Aaron, and get your take on this. And matter of fact, we're going to probably bring Courtney in for some of this discussion as well, because folks seem to think they just going to talk about young Black women any which kind of way. Newsflash, spoiler alert, it don't work out well. But we'll be right back here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media. We've got our special guest, Mr. Ricky Dell Harrington Jr., the ran for Congress up down there in Arkansas. We're going to talk a little bit about what he's planning on doing in the future as well, because it's a big deal. We definitely need more people like you, sir, representing the people. And we'll get into some of that as well. But we'll be right back here on Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media. Right back. The following is brought to you in partnership by Symbol. Symbol is a new sports marketplace where you can trade shares of professional teams like stocks. You love sports. You interested in fantasy sports without the weekly annoyance of fantasy league upkeep? Then Symbol's the app for you. With Symbol, fantasy sports is going to a whole other level. How it works is simple. You buy Symbol shares for your favorite sim teams on the app. When your sim team wins, you get automatic cash deposits, and you don't lose any money when they lose. That's it. So if you follow trends across football, basketball, and baseball, and you think your team is a sleeper, simply invest in your favorite sim teams on Symbol and watch your virtual portfolio prove you right or wrong. And if you want to get in on the action right away, Vendetta Sports Media's got you covered. Go to symbol.app/Vendetta and use our exclusive promo code Vendetta, and you'll get a $10 bonus when making your first deposit. Symbol, taking fantasy sports to a whole other level. All right, we're back, Tanimals, here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media. We're joined by special guest, Mr. Ricky Dale Harrington. Ran for the was the Senate, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Arkansas. Unfortunately, we did not get him in that seat, but you're not done in the political arena right now. Do you want to speak a little bit to what your plans are coming up?
Well, I am planning on running for governor of Arkansas. My platform on the previous run was one mainly focused on criminal justice reform, me being a former prison chaplain, and also healthcare reform, some of my main two planks on my campaign. I worked in healthcare as well. I worked at psychiatric hospital as a crisis prevention technician. And so my job was to, at the psych hospital, if there was a encounter that was going to turn violent, I tried to make it not turn violent. And if it did turn violent, well, I dealt with it. That was what my job was. But most of the time, 90% of the time, we were able to talk people down. And so whenever I take a look at what's going on in our world right now, especially our nation, with police brutality, and it usually ends with officer firing a firearm on an unarmed citizen. And I think about my time in the psychiatric hospital where there was very violent altercations. But again, 90% of the time, we were able to talk the person down from having that violent altercation. So if I'm able to do that with someone that has severe mental illness, why can't our officers do that with, just average citizens out there in the street? So, this is a kind of a big thing for me. And running for governor, there's a lot of opportunities to make that dream a reality and transforming the criminal justice system and then transforming the healthcare system on a state level, because states receive, a lot of Medicare funding through big block grants, but the states administer, Medicaid. And the former governor, well, not former, excuse me, current governor, Asa Hutchinson, he started an Arkansas Works program that required a work element to be able to also receive some of the Medicaid funding and get health care. So there's some infrastructure there. And so I'm hoping to bridge the gap between people who have different ideas of how the government should function or how we all should function, but we have to realize that we all come from different places, different perspectives, and we have to work together in order to make this country function at a level where it needs to be for all of us to have pleasant lives.
And is there a website or anything that we can go to that can, get more information on your platform or even donate to your campaign?
You can follow me on Twitter. My handle changed from Ricky for Senate, FOR Senate, to Ricky D. Harrington. I did it for just generic reasons. I'm trying to stay active on Twitter, and you can also follow me on Facebook as well, my Facebook page. Currently, right now, we are hashing out some of the strategy. You can't win an election without good campaign infrastructure. And so we want to make sure that everything is together because Sarah Huckabee Sanders is in the race, and Trump has stated that he's going to come down and campaign with Sarah Huckabee. So I want to be able to function, and I'm ready to compete at the level necessary to win that governor's race.
Now, with the former president already stating that he's going to come down and back up his former press secretary, are there any heavyweights on the progressive side, on the Democratic side, that are planning on coming to work with you?
Well, I'm a libertarian.
Okay.
The last race, it was going to be a four-way race. The Democrat had got knocked off the ballot. Actually didn't get knocked off. He withdrawn his name from the race, and the independent candidate was knocked off the ballot. And so I decided to run as a libertarian because our current form of politics is too much hyperpartisanship, and it's pushing us to a level where we no longer listen to one another when we need to be respecting one another's, as I said before, so we can work together, because compromise is not a bad word. Trump coming, there's a lot of heavyweights there. The Democrats haven't really put up someone yet. I can't really speak to their strategy, but I got almost 400,000 votes in the previous election as a third-party candidate and set a record for the Libertarian Party as the highest percentage vote. So, I'm coming in with a little bit of name recognition, and I just want to build bridges. I don't want to burn them down. I don't want to tear them down. We just got to get more people that are interested in building bridges with one another.
Amen. And I'm definitely on board with that. I'm a firm believer that compromise is not a bad word. I also feel that with the way the political climate is right now, we definitely need to start getting more common sense and good faith back into politics. We need to get accurate, credible information back into politics, into our everyday life, really. So we here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show, we support you 150%. Whatever, I'll say it right now. I'm not speaking for anybody else affiliated with this show. I'm speaking just for me. If there's anything that I am able to do to help in any way with this silly little show of mine, do not hesitate to ever ask me. I will be more than happy to throw my name into the Harrington hat and fight the fight with you if I can. Even though I'm all the way here in Pennsylvania, you still got the support of somebody out this far east.
I appreciate that very much.
And anytime, and usually I save this for after the show, but if at any point in time you ever want to come on the show and discuss these things, anything that's going on in whatever, doors always open. Last minute, doesn't matter. You want on, it's yours. The time is yours.
Thank you, sir.
So, Courtney, I wanted to get you in on this discussion as well, because now you're aware of what happened with the Mr. Blood Sugar Spike from last week. Now, now everyone here knows someone that has diabetes, correct? I know at least 2 or 3 people. Have they ever just, when their blood sugar spiked, just started busting out N-words?
No, that's their last thing that they're worried about. No.
My first experience of someone with diabetes was Julia Roberts in Steel Magnolias. And she just wanted to go home. And she wanted people to stop messing with her hair. I didn't hear Julia, pretty woman, throwing in bombs. So
I had a good friend of mine back in high school. He had to have an insulin pump to survive, basically. And whenever his sugar got low, he's just like, "Can I go to the cafeteria and get an orange juice, please?"
Exactly.
It wasn't like you
I just
know
get
who
some
I
orange
hate.
juice?
You know the type of people that I really hate. That wasn't the first thing on his mind. It's just like, can I please go get an orange juice so I can feel better?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that diabetes. Now we heard Roseanne say Ambien. This guy's talking about blood sugar, but apparently in Oklahoma City, an announcer for the home team, Newkirk High School, had this to say about the Crooked Oak High School girls team. He said, quote, "Their names are pretty disgusting, but I'm gonna try to call them out." Now, it's saying that now they caught this on video. I'm gonna see if I can bring it up for you guys. All right, I'm getting it set up now. Like, and I'm actually real excited that I can do this. So, you know, I'm like a little kid with a new toy.
In the system, the base rate. The Crooked Oak Brady West End.
What did you just say?
I'm gonna try to call him out.
No, you didn't say that.
We're out of court, 579, sophomore, number 3, Iwana Freeman.
Okay.
We're out of forward, 6'1", sophomore, number 21, Luana Liggins.
Noticing a pattern here.
Starting out of forward, the 5'9" senior, number 12. Starting guard, 5'9" senior, number 20, Molly Lloyd. Starting out of guard, 5'9" senior, number 10, Ezra Padilla. Good luck, ladies.
So, is anyone else picking up on a pattern in his feeling of their names being disgusting, or am I just crazy? I mean, Courtney, as a young Black woman, give me your thoughts.
So when I saw that, when I first kind of came across that that article, and it said Oklahoma, and I automatically thought like Oklahoma just already has like this bad like just rep as far as racism, you know, starting with like the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre and stuff like that. So I'm just like, okay, there's no surprise here. But as like a Black woman and just seeing and hearing this man, specifically, these are like children, they're still in high school. You're gonna speak down on these women, I mean girls, who it's just like that's their names. Like there's no reason for you to be this ignorant and disrespectful towards people. Because first of all, one, there's no perfect name in this world. And it's just like I just found that very ignorant, especially coming from a grown man.
I agree with you 100%. Mr. Harrington, your thoughts?
So this gentleman was trying to be tongue-in-cheek about the pronunciation of the names of these Black young girls.
Yes.
You know, I know coming up, a lot of comedians, you would make that joke. You know, some prominent comedians used to joke about D.L. Hughley. That's the one that first comes to mind. But he's a comedian,
Right.
not a high school sports game announcer, and it was totally out of line to even say something like that or try to lampoon it or insinuate in any manner in that type of arena. Just because you can don't always mean you should. And furthermore, I said this before. My experience as a black man is not as severe as my parents' experience, and definitely not as severe as my grandparents' experience. There are things that we have to deal with in this country that I don't think some of our Caucasian brothers and sisters understand, that they are continuing to propagate those ideas. And if you don't mind me just telling you just a little story about my own life. I was senior in high school at a bowling alley. And I took one of those little small balls and chunked it down there, and it zoomed down and went in the back, jumped all around. And then there was about a couple of minutes later, 3 older white men came up to me. They asked me, "Hey, you the one threw that ball down there?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well, we from the old school. We got an AK-47 and a noose in the back of the truck. And we'll drag your black ass behind that truck and string you up in a tree and shoot your dead body." And some of the people I was with, they laughed at that. They were some of my they were white friends, of course. Should I really call them friends? So how does that make you feel as a person? I was a senior in high school. That was 2004. Here we are, 2021. That's not that far ago. And what I would like to focus on mainly is not the overt racism, but some of the undercover type of racism, particularly the ones that thought that was funny. To laugh at a threat of one of your friend's life in ritualistic murder. And I'm not sure if you remember in Texas, in Jasper, Texas, where they drugged Mr. Bird until most of his body was gone.
Yep, I remember that.
We have to find a way to move beyond this, but we can't do it until we have a real conversation about it. And the conversation is going to have to be amongst white people themselves.
Jackson?
I agree. I mean, being in Arkansas, it's a deeply red state. The areas that I've grown up in, it's mostly white people. So, just me growing up and being my own man and expanding my worldview outside of Northeast Arkansas. Like there's things, that maybe 13, 14-year-old Jackson thought were funny, but as I've grown older, I've learned, I try to be the best person I can be. I try to learn these lessons, and I like having conversations like this and listening as best as I can. And I normally don't talk, during stuff like this, because I just want to listen, because I'll never understand. Like that's just the thing. I'll never get it, but I just want to do what I can and how I can be the best person and help in the best way possible. And so, when I, like Brian, we've had these conversations, in the past, like when we had Mr. Sean Gibson on, too. I'm sure, we'll bring it up a little bit later, but, just for me as a white man, as a white person, yes, we've got, I've got to, there's still things that I've got to improve on. There's things that everybody's got to improve on across everywhere, and we'll never be able to actually make the progress that we need to do if we don't start having these conversations. And I'm happy that the conversations are starting to happen now. I think, especially with a lot of my friends, we've had deep conversations, and it all started with the multiple killings that happened last year. That is definitely something that talks got intense, but at the end of it, I think everybody walked away for the better, because we started because now, when you talk about the pandemic and everything, I think that kind of opened things up for us because we didn't have the distractions and everything that we do in everyday life start hearing this. And part of it has to be, being more aware, seeing things like what's happening in a small town in Oklahoma, and it's a high school game. Like, it doesn't, on the surface level, when you just leave it at that, it doesn't sound like it would be that important, but it is, because it's a small town thing, and that's how the sentiment is across small towns. So, and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but
That's nothing
and
new,
it,
Jackson.
yeah, I know it's nothing new. I know it's nothing new, but no,
I think you're right. I wrote an op-ed last year for the magazine that my publisher also runs, and I titled it, and I based it toward my white friends. And this was right after George Floyd was murdered. And I said, to my white friends, I appreciate you being angry with me, but I don't need you fighting for me right now. What I need you to do as my friend is, when you're around your white friends or your white family, that's when I need you to stand up for me. I don't need you to stand up for me among other Black people. I need you to stand up for me when you're around other white folks, when you're around auntie and uncle and pop and nana, and they're spouting some racist ish. That's when I need you to fight for me. I need you to fight for me behind closed doors at home. You fight. It's easy. It's easy to fight with me in the streets. It's easy to have my back in the street. But can you still have my back at home among your peoples? Because if you can't, then you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Whether you mean to be or not. I mean, I had to have, there's now one of my best friends, his mother and father essentially, when I say adopted me, that they basically said, you're our son. It wasn't like I was in foster care or anything, but they're a white couple, and they used to joke, you're our son that got left in the oven too long. And it's still a joke that we make, because it's like, all right, yeah, there was never malicious intent, but I always knew that they had my back. If I needed my mom or dad Costello, they had my back, and nobody ever got to say anything negative about me. But when among my brothers, and I still refer to them as my brothers to this day, they would make race jokes, and I would laugh at those jokes because I thought I had to. My first 2 years of high school, my grade school years were in a predominantly Black Catholic school. And then my first 2 years of high school was in a predominantly white high school. And that's when I first learned about racism. I got called N-word every day, literally every day. I had teachers.
At a Catholic high school?
Yes, at a Catholic high school. Matter of fact, I don't have a problem name dropping the high school, Central Catholic High School, here in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right there on the University of Pittsburgh campus. Yep, calling y'all out. The same high school that quarterback Mark Bulger went to, actor Zachary Quinto went to. Okay. And they called me N-word every day. I had a priest tell me, we don't want your kind in our school. I got into a fist fight with Pittsburgh Steelers, former Pittsburgh Steeler J.T. Thomas. I got into a couple of fist fights with his son. And there were white kids that had come up with him in grade school and middle school. And I remember I was sitting in my biology class, and there were two white kids that sat in that class. One of them, his name was Nathan or Nate. And he just had a mean look about, there's some people when they just have that mean look in their eye. And there was another kid who was best friends with him who was kind of a goofy looking kind of guy. Look kind of goofy. I don't remember his name, but I remember these two guys used to give me a hard time incessantly, really hard time. And one day we're in class and they're just giving me the hard time and I'm trying to ignore them. And now I never use the word, but I'm going to use it in this context and telling the story. The goofy kid looks at Nate and goes, you know how I know that Adam wasn't black. And the teacher stopped lecturing. And he looks at his goofy kid, looks at Nate and goes, a nigger wouldn't give a rib to nobody. And they start laughing. And then goofy kid looks at me like looking for a reaction. And the teacher even laughed. And I looked at him and I said, you hang out with JT all the time. Do you say that around him? And he goes, what's JT going to care? Don't nobody care about you. I'll say what I want. Which tells me that he said this stuff around him and it was fine. And see, that's something that I took to this day. I still remember that like it just happened. And my mother sent me to this school because now my freshman year of high school was 1993. So I'm an old man. My mother couldn't send me to public high school. She was afraid to send me to public high school because high schools back then were like the Wild West. Cats were getting shot for shoes, for jackets, for looking at people funny. They were getting shot. In the high school that was near my home, I definitely would have gotten shot because I also had bullies from the neighborhood that went there. So my mother called herself putting herself into debt to send me to a school that I could get a quality education and be safe. Meanwhile, I was less safe. Now, I bring that up because I felt like I had to let white people treat me this way so I could have friends. So when I'm around the Costello, my brothers, and they're making jokes, I'm just eating it because I feel like I have to. It wasn't up until maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, that my brother looks at me and he goes, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for ever making jokes like that. I'm sorry for any of that because he understands. And that's why when you said, Jackson, we got to start having these conversations and we got to start getting uncomfortable because you don't understand what it means for, Ricky or I being black men. Just like Ricky and I won't know what it's like for Courtney to be a black woman. We know what it's like for her being black, but we don't know the female aspect of it. So it's just like if Courtney needed me to understand her plight as a woman, a black woman, I have to shut up and listen to her and be uncomfortable if I have to be, so I can understand her plight, just like you recognize, like you said it multiple times off air and on air. We've got to have these discussions because there are people in this country that do not look at us as people. Case in point, the NAACP is calling out the NFL for partnering with, among others, Fox Sports. Why? Because they are concerned that the $2.2 billion that the NFL is going to be getting from Fox Sports, they're going to use for Fox News. Now, for those that don't remember, Fox News, you can't even call them a news outlet. You can't. And that's just not me being facetious. That's not just me stating an opinion. Legally, to make sure Tucker Carlson did not get in trouble, to make sure they didn't get in trouble because of Tucker Carlson. Fox News had to release a statement saying that anyone, and I believe, and I'm probably misquoting, so I am just going to paraphrase, anyone that with actual reason, will know that this is not news. They said that. What was
Admitted
it?
it.
Yes, they admitted it.
In court.
Yes. And Sidney Powell is using this exact same defense because she's being sued for over $1 billion for using Fox News talking points to explain how the election was stolen. And for those that have short memories about how Fox News has zero respect for Black athletes, Black people, period. You might know her name, Laura Ingraham. Remember, she told LeBron James to shut up and dribble when he started speaking about social justice.
Mm-hmm.
But when Drew Brees talks about being proud to be an American, oh, Drew Brees. White Jesus, Drew Brees. Now, I have to ask you.
That was a good one.
I try. I try to throw a little bit of comedy into the show, especially when we're getting heavy. Well, Brother Harrington, do you think now? What are your thoughts on the NAACP calling out the NFL about this new deal? This new deal that's supposed to take place at the beginning of next season of the 2023 season. So 2 years from now, this new deal takes place.
Well, definitely, we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years the start with Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem.
That was going to be my next point. Absolutely.
Just the trash mentality of how, instead of engaging in the conversation of, well, why is he doing this? Folks turn it into something else, into disrespect for the troops and things like that. Well, if it's that much of an issue, just don't play the national anthem at a game. I mean, the owners have the right to make that decision. Mm-hmm. If it's that big of an issue and you don't want to get caught up in it and lose money, just don't play the national anthem. I mean, it's I don't understand.
Up until after 9/11, the players always stayed in the locker room for the national anthem. It wasn't until the only sports where the athletes were out there for the national anthem was basketball and the MLB and hockey. NFL didn't have people come out until after 9/11. Now, Courtney,
and Mark Cuban, who owns the Dallas Mavericks, he did try to. They did not play the national anthem at a couple of Mavericks games, but then similar to the Kaepernick situation, where with Kaepernick had been going on for a little bit, and then someone caught wind of it, and then the story blew up. The same thing happened with Mark Cuban, but I think at least for the NBA, it may be a little different because the NBA does have it is a directive to when the national anthem is playing, you stand for it, you don't kneel. I forget the player's name, but it was back in the 70s, I want to say.
Are you talking about Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf back in the 90s?
Yeah, that's
formerly Chris Jackson from former LSU standout, converted to Islam, changed his name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
Yeah, he was doing.
He prayed.
Yeah, he was praying during the national anthem. So he wasn't standing. He was doing his thing, and that's when the NBA slapped him on the wrist.
They slapped him. Oh, they didn't just slap him on the wrist. He never when his contract was up, he didn't get re-signed anywhere. He was the original blackballed out of sports. And Courtney has a quote from the letter that the president of the NAACP wrote. This is Brother Derek Johnson. He said, quote, "The NFL, a league where nearly 70% of the players are Black, should not be complicit in helping to increase the profit of Fox News, a leading voice in condemning those same players for peaceful demonstrations against systemic racism." End quote. Now, Brother Harrington, please correct me if I'm wrong on this. But it almost seems to me that the NFL is trying to have its cake with these 70% of players that are making them billions of dollars, but they want to eat it too by placating to their, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, their white supremacist base that follow the leads of a Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham, where they want our star athletes to shut up and ball.
Yes.
That's what it seems like to me.
Especially that type of comment from Miss Ingram, shut up and ball. To any of us that have had to endure the minute between the lines type of covert racism, we understood it as stay in your place, boy. Just straightforward, because sometimes that's how those type of things are communicated. And speaking specifically to the issue, this again, I'm gonna bring up the NRA here. I stopped supporting them because of Philando Castile. Was a guard carrying member, had a concealed carry license, and he was doing his duty by informing the officer that he was carrying a firearm. And the NRA is supposed to be real big on that, but they didn't take a stance like they should have. And I was like, I'm not dealing with y'all anymore at all. You're not who you say you're supposed to be. And then whenever it comes down to freedom, and whenever someone does follow the proper procedure and is murdered like that with the baby in the back of the seat, his girlfriend live streaming it as the blood is soaking his white shirt. I mean, I just can't imagine what that's like. And Trevor Noah had made a comment on this, and every time I think about it, it really just tears my heart up that you have the officer who's outside, who's screaming at the top of his lungs, having a panic attack, and she has her hands on both of the wheels and still has the presence of mind to address the officer as officer and sir while he's right there beside her dying. And that just, it broke my heart.
I cried. Matter of fact, my wife and I, we have a protocol because I'm terrified to drive. I do, but I told her if we ever get pulled over, because I always keep my phone on the dashboard with, it's magnetized held there. I tell her if we ever get pulled over, instantly, my hands are going on the wheel. You open Facebook, live stream, and then you put your hands on the dashboard. And we keep our hands where they can see. We put on the dome light so they can see. And we go from there. And then you don't talk because, I'm former law enforcement. One person talks at a time to try to keep things calm because multiple voices causes issues. It causes confusion. And if there's confusion on top of fear, that costs lives. If he asks for something, I tell him it is in the glove compartment. May my wife reach for it.
Yes.
And you do it slowly. You keep one hand on the dashboard, the other hand opens the glove box, and now there's a little light inside the glove box area. You make sure he can see your hand, and that light is still there while my hand stays on there. And we have a whole protocol, and I actually made her repeat the protocol back to me just in case. But, now I drive a little bit easier because I have a specialized plate that I've been told should help alleviate my fears. Plus, I'm grateful I live in a borough that is the police there are competent. So thank God for that. But Fox News spent so much time in the wake of Philando Castile, in the wake of the brother who the police opened fired on him for no reason. He was on his way home from class. the white Oklahoma trooper shot this man because, and they even said on the dash cam, "Oh, this looks like a bad dude." And this woman unloaded her gun on him in the wake of that shooting, in the wake of every shooting of Tamir Rice, of all of these young and older black men. They have been so pro-cop to the point of being anti-black.
That's all it is.
If the vast majority of your employees are black, what do you think you are saying to them?
You are a commodity.
And that's it. That's all you are.
Really, that's all we have been in this country.
Yeah, that's all it's ever.
I mean, at the end of the day, to the point where we've got women and black women, not just women, but black women as coaches and referees in the NFL. We're still just commodities. So I think this is something that we're going to have to keep our eyes on, J-Law.
Mm-hmm.
And if something happens, if something more happens, we can talk on it. But if we don't, unfortunately, man, it's business as usual, because this new TV deal is a 10-year deal. This is going to go to the end of the 2033 season.
And they're hosting the Super Bowl.
And thank you, Courtney. And they're hosting the damn Super Bowl.
They have an exclusive deal.
Mm-hmm.
An exclusive
Wow.
deal.
I think it's either like 2 or 3 times they will host the Super Bowl.
Yeah, apparently the Super Bowl. The
Yeah,
Super Bowl
I
is
think-
supposed to rotate between Fox.
Yeah, it's like
and
CBS, and I think I did see where ESPN too is
ESPN is covering
getting
ESPN
something.
is getting Monday Night Football. Fox will continue to cover the NFC. NBC will cover Sunday Night Football. Amazon Prime is going to be Thursday night football. But at the end, CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC, ESPN, and Amazon are included in this deal. And the football and the Super Bowl will be hosted on CBS, Fox, NBC, and ABC. So
ABC.
I guess these are going to, so the Super Bowl is going to rotate year to year to year. Each one is going to get 2 years. And I think like another 2 are going to get a 3rd year. We're going to take our final break. We got to talk about, is Deshaun Watson the Glenn Quagmire of the NFL? Or is this hyped up because he wants out of Houston? I especially want Courtney's take on this as a woman, as a black woman. We want to get our guests, Lord willing, future governor-elect of Arkansas, Ricky Dale Harrington Jr., speak into the universe, speak and claim it to be as he battles the evil empire. I definitely want to get y'all's take on this because Jackson, I don't know. And it bothers me that I don't know. As Jackson's neighbors are drag racing. I love it. Dude.
I actually think that's my father-in-law.
Jackson's father-in-law is like, I'm ready for supper. We'll be back for the final segment of the Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media Network. Make sure you help us out on Patreon because we got to pay bills too. Go to patreon.com/Vendetta Sports Media and find out how you can help us help you get the best of sports, gaming, and sports stock gambling with Symbol. Go to vendettasportsmedia.com. Find all of our content. We'll be right back. Hey, you. Yeah, you. In case you hadn't heard, your favorite Renegade Sports Media Group has its own Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Vendetta Sports Media to support our efforts to continuously bring you sports, gaming, and other media coverage as only we can. We've got 4 different membership tiers. For $3 a month, we'll give you a simple thank you on our Patreon site. For $6 a month, you get a thank you and you get to become a recruit in Jackson Law's Vendetta University Gaming Series. For $10 a month, you get everything from the previous tiers, a special thank you at the end of our videos, free access to our upcoming Discord chat, and a free koozie after 4 months. And then the big dog, $50 a month, gets you everything from the previous tiers, as well as opportunities for Fantasy League invites, stream gaming, possible invites to mock NFL and NBA draft sessions, a once-a-month Google Hangout, and after 4 months, a free t-shirt. Yeah! Go to patreon.com/Vendetta Sports Media and help us to improve our pledge to bring you the best sports, gaming, and other media coverage. All right, we're back, you Tanimals, for the Tanndemonium Sports Show here on Vendetta Sports Media. This is our final segment. We've been going a little bit long because we don't have the master of the clock, Ms. Bridget 12 Rounds, with us. But in her stead, we have Ms. Courtney Plumer with us. Thank you so much, Courtney, for coming out and standing in. You've helped make this edition of the Tanndemonium Sports Show a huge success. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And a special thank you to our special guest, Mr. Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. And I'm going to say it again because speak it into reality and lay claim in his name, future governor-elect of Arkansas, Ricky Dale Harrington. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Tanndemonium Sports Show for your insight, for your analysis. We really and truly appreciate you coming on.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Tan. Appreciate it.
Nah, I'm Brian. I'm just Brian. I don't do things. I'm formal to others. I don't take formality too well. It makes me feel nervous. Makes me feel like I'm in trouble. Last time I was called Mr. Tan, I was in front of a judge in family court. So before we get to the ugly, I want to give a rest in power and much love and much respect to a legend, Mr. Elgin Baylor, who we just lost. Elgin Baylor, who was an 11-time NBA All-Star and a man who he's part of the reason why the Lakers are the storied franchise that they are. You hear about Magic, you hear about Kareem, where so much about LeBron and Kobe, and you hear a lot about Jerry West. But you know what? If Jerry West doesn't have Elgin Baylor, are they anywhere near that successful?
Yeah, and where would Elgin Baylor rank, among the NBA greats, if he hadn't run into the buzzsaw that was Bill Russell and the Celtics of the '60s? Because that Lakers team made the NBA Finals 8 times in the '60s, and every single time they ran into Bill Russell. And unfortunately for Elgin Baylor, his final season, he only played 9 games. He was injured, retired, and then that's when they finally won the title. So unfortunately, he retired, not an NBA champion, but
I would be mad.
Definitely one of the greats to be remembered.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a man who.
Did we lose Brian?
No, I'm here. Oh, you didn't hear me?
Okay.
You didn't hear me talk about.
Yeah, you were frozen.
Oh, I was saying I'd have been mad as hell. I'd have been beyond furious. But this is a guy who they say before there was a Michael Jordan, there was Elgin Baylor.
Michael Jordan is on record saying that Elgin Baylor is the player that he looked up to when he was growing up. That's who he wanted his game to be like.
Yeah. So rest in power, and passed away of natural causes. Nobody is trying to put COVID to it or anything else. So at least, the man was able to go peacefully. And That's all any of us can ask for. That's all any of us can pray for.
What was he?
Right about
80,
that.
80, 86, 89, something like that. Lived a long, good life. Did a lot in his life too.
Absolutely. So, Deshaun Watson. I wish we were talking about Deshaun getting his wish and getting traded out of Houston. But Courtney here has some updates on Deshaun Watson, the sexual assault allegations that are against him, where he's like, Courtney, you're saying that he's being called a serial predator.
Yes. By I believe it was the last woman, so the 14th woman who filed this lawsuit, she called him that.
Okay. Yeah, give us some of that intel that you got for us, because that's really important.
So as of 2 hours ago, two more lawsuits have been filed against Watson. So in total now it's 16 women that are claiming these allegations against him.
Okay.
And it's all pretty much the same type of women that are coming. So they all have the same job. So they're mostly been all massage therapists, actually.
Okay.
An MO.
Yeah. I mean, this makes me nervous because my wife has a degree in massage therapy. Now, she only does massages for family and friends of family that they refer. But this makes me a little bit nervous. Am I going, if my wife gets her, because we're planning on her getting her certification so she can start doing this freelance. Am I going to have to start roughing cats up?
Yeah, it made me uncomfortable just reading it. I was like, ugh.
And that's partially why I wanted your take on this as well. Now, but before we get more on your take, Jackson, you got some more intel.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it while we were on our quick break, and that there is a possibility. This is the conspiracy theory that's happening right now, and the whole situation is just awful. You hate it, because if it is true, then Deshaun Watson, will deserve whatever happens to him, because there's absolutely no place for that, of course. But even if it isn't true, then it's, that sucks too, because then it's taking attention away from real victims of situations like this. And it seems like someone is trying to get back at Deshaun, which is what the conspiracy theory is, because there is a possible connection between the lawyer that is representing so far the 16 women that have filed suit, and that has talked to the rest of the women, I guess, as well. And is that this could that he possibly has a connection to the family that owns the Houston Texans, and that this may be something to try to get back at Deshaun for wanting out of Houston. Now, there is no evidence of collusion of any kind whatsoever. Busby is the name. Tony Busby is the name of the lawyer. I'm reading from Pro Football Talk. So this is one of the largest NFL websites, highly trusted sources. This is an excerpt from when talking about Busby this past Friday when he gave a press conference. He says, "I wouldn't recognize Cal or Hal or whatever his name is if I saw him on the street." Very next paragraph, the author of this article stated, "It's hard to believe that Busby doesn't know that Cal McNair's name is Cal McNair. Cal McNair, the McNair family, are the owners of the Houston Texans, or that Busby doesn't know what Cal McNair looks like. Taking such an extreme position calls the credibility of the denial into question, and it invites curiosity as to whether he's opting to throw as much dirt as possible on any potential connection, going as far as to feign ignorance of Cal McNair's first name." So it's basically he's trying too hard to cover up any sort of connection. There's also talk about interviewing people in Houston, and that everyone knows who the McNairs are. Everyone knows who Busby is. He's a big shot lawyer out of Houston. So, and usually all rich people know who the other rich people are, even in a city, I don't want to say as small as Houston, but it's not as bigger as other cities. It's a fairly large
Well,
city,
Houston
though.
is big. Houston's pretty big.
It's big.
Houston's
It's big.
pretty
It's big. It's not as big as some of them, but like I'm talking about, like when you talk about super ultra mega rich.
I mean, yeah,
You know,
I mean,
like the richy,
Houston's,
richy rich.
Houston's no New York City, but
No. Okay,
Woo!
but anyway, beside the point. The rich people,
you got me
know
ready to
other.
go on Wikipedia to get the square footage of Houston.
Yeah, not the Deshaun Watson issue, but just debating how big Houston is. But it does bring into question, and like I said, it's like there's so much about this that it sucks that everybody is in this situation now, because like I said earlier, it's like if it's true, then it's a top 5 quarterback, someone that has a young man that has a lot of great potential to really be something. His coach from college called him the Michael Jordan of quarterbacks, of football players. And he's got the numbers to back it up. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But if he is like this, then, you know, he probably doesn't deserve to play football again. Now,
Probably.
the NFL is notorious. I say probably because the NFL is notorious for
Greg Hardy.
letting abusers back into the league. You know, they Tyreek
Yeah.
Hill punches his wife in the face and he's on a Super Bowl winning team. The only person that ever really get punished for it was Ray Rice, and it's because there was video evidence from it.
Yeah,
That's just because they had video of it. That's the only reason why.
and
that
they
happened.
didn't just have video.
Yeah, I mean, it was a horrible video. I watched the video. It was horrific, absolutely horrific. And so, yeah, that man suffered the consequences from his actions. But then it's like you also turn it around, like I said earlier, where if the conspiracy is true, and this is just the McNair family trying to throw dirt on to on Deshaun Watson, so that way his trade value decreases, or just
His
he
career is
can't go
over.
anywhere. Yeah, his career is over. Whatever happens, then it's like their
We
revenge, and then it's like, well, then you just took advantage of this young man as well as the women that were involved with this, and then you took away, real issues that are happening. Yeah, they took away the real voices. It's the same thing. It's crying wolf, and when you cry wolf, the next time something happens that may be real, people are going to look the other way, because it's like, no, because they're going to bring up, what about Deshaun Watson, and all that other stuff. So it's a horrible mess. There's no, I was going to say there's no satisfactory ending, because that's the wrong thing to say, because if he is convicted and he did do these things, then he does need to be persecuted to the full extent of the law.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's just, I don't know, man.
Brother
It's a mess. That's all I know.
Brother Harrington, as someone that's in the public eye, you with politics, I'm sure that some things like this really are worrisome, because it almost seems like the court of public opinion has it's deliberated and it's done within 10 seconds.
Yes.
And bam, it's over. So with you as the sort of the public figure on this panel, what sort of advice would you give to Deshaun Watson right now? What would you say to him?
Well, I mean, I'd try to give him some advice from a pastoral sense rather than from a politician, because that's my true calling in life.
Right.
Is to minister to people. And that advice would be, if you have a certain type of proclivity, you need to find some consensual avenues for that, rather than taking advantage of people and violating other human beings. Now, to speak a little bit more on it, I'm always a little objective, especially whenever it comes to the law. And the first time that I heard it, I wondered why it wasn't being pursued from a criminal perspective first off, because I think these things need to, especially sexual crimes, need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Absolutely.
and working with people that are sexually dangerous persons. They need to first be tried for their crimes, all the evidence presented, and if convicted, serve their time and also receive some type of rehabilitation, especially if you are a class 4 sexually dangerous person. And if what is being stated is true, that he has 14 to 16 victims, that is a predator. And we don't need those type of people in our society.
I agree. And I want to get your take, Courtney, on this as well. But the one thing that I will say, and I think you nailed it on the head, there, Brother Harrington, and Courtney, I want your opinion on this as well, is why is this in civil court? Now, it's been a while and a few concussions since my criminal law and civil law classes. But especially since Michael Jackson's legal issues, the criminal proceedings tend to come before the civil proceedings because you need to get, you want to, because obviously the criminal stuff is more important than the civil stuff. So while there's a big part of me that wants to question why we are going civilly first, because, Courtney, we're not past the statute of limitations on this. The statute of limitations in sexual assault and rape is 7 years. So, and this all centers from goings on in June and August of last year, as well as a January 2021 session. So there's no statute of limitations they're dealing with. So I guess one thing that I want to get your take on, Courtney, is with something like this, where are your thoughts as a woman?
Well, as a woman, I'm disgusted. Like, it was like me preparing those notes for you guys and just reading different articles. I was just like typing out the notes about what happened and stuff, and I was just like grossed out, just disgusted. But I partially think why the civil, like, it's not being held at a criminal stand is possibly because, one, he has money, he's a public figure, so they probably just, I just say that's mostly the main thing. But from a women's standpoint, I definitely are going to side with the victims, these women, but also just to not even just from a human thing, because you don't violate people, you don't do stuff like that, you just don't do that. But I'm reading here from that NFL article that I found. I didn't get to this part at the beginning, but it's saying here that Watson's lawyer, he has said that there have been numerous unsolicited comments in the past week from many licensed massage therapists who have worked with Deshaun, and said that he was a gentleman and a model client who never engaged in inappropriate conduct. Now, from there, like, of course, it's going to be his lawyer saying something like that, but I also think that too, why it hasn't also go criminal, because it hasn't released the names of these women from what the article says. But as women, I think that situations like this, especially towards celebrities, especially towards men who have money and who are in power, I think that it's good that these women are coming out with these allegations. Like, you shouldn't let someone who has this power and money to just get away with what he's doing. So if he really has done this, then he should be punished. It doesn't matter who he is. At the end of the day, he's done it. He did it. So that's my take on that. And yeah.
I can piggyback on what you said there for a second. Just like earlier in our conversation, how we said that The racism issue in America is not really on the burden of the minorities to rectify, but on the burden is on the dominant race in our country to fix it themselves. We men, we have to really clean up our act and how we deal with our better halves in our species, treating them with all respect and purity. I am quoting the Bible when I say this. And the culture that we have with the locker room talk, it is propagated, and we have to do our best to stop it. We can't put the blame on women for these things happening. The blame is on the rapist. The blame is on the predator. The blame is on the person that thought that they could violate somebody else's body for their own plaything or whatever. We just have to just have a zero tolerance for that as a people, and that requires big change.
I agree 100%. I also, I want to definitely say, I definitely agree with you, Courtney, what you're saying, that these women are the accusers. I think that one thing we need to do as a society, it's okay. I want to say that when I question why this is civil and not criminal, that in no way, shape, or form even to suggest that I'm doubting these women. I'm absolutely not. I feel that, honestly, the only way that you get through to people of means is to take their means. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm asking that question because I am questioning the validity of their claims. I'm not saying that I don't believe them. I'm saying that if he did what they are accusing him of, then to hell with football. This man don't need to see the streets for a long time. He needs some rehabilitation in why he has this certain issue, but he also needs to be punished with it, and that punishment needs to be at the expense of his freedom. The only reason why I asked that question is because it would not surprise me if there was something more, but I am no way disputing these women, because I'm sorry, and this is not anti Deshaun Watson as a person. I don't know the man, but professional athletes do not have a very good precedence when it comes to women. Looking at you, Greg Hardy. Looking at you, Ray Rice. I'm looking at who's that kid, the third-rate offensive lineman that almost murdered his girlfriend.
Can't even
the
his
kid
name,
from
yeah.
the one from the Seahawks. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. And then of course, Tyreek Hill, Joe Mixon's another guy.
Yeah, I mean, even and you even look at Adrian Peterson with the abuse of his son. Here's the thing. I dealt with corporal punishment as a kid. I'm a Gen X kid. So there was corporal punishment, but my mother never did me like that. So when it comes to professional athletes, the precedent is not on their side. And these women, one thing that I'm grateful for, and Brother Harrington, you can speak to this because I've got a couple years on you. However, we're still within the same kind of time frame. Anytime women spoke out against athletes, what were some of the questions that were asked? What was she wearing? What was she doing? Why was she in that situation? I remember people asking that when Mike Tyson was caught for rape. Why? I even heard women say, well, why would you go to a man's hotel room when you know what he wants? You can say yes in the moment, and as you get there, you can change your mind.
Yes, even while you're in the middle,
even while it's going on.
And one person says no, and the other person doesn't stop. it becomes rape.
It becomes, yep. I don't care I don't care how in the middle of it you are. I don't care what the moment is. The instant that the other person says no, it's it. It don't matter that they, and I'm making sure I get my pronouns right. It don't matter if they said yes to get to that point. Once those two letters are put together in a complete breath to make that word, where no matter what language you speak, no means no. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I really feel like, as someone who, like I said, my wife who's in the other room, she has her degree in massage therapy. I'm just thinking, if somebody tried to call themselves forcing her to do something, first of all, I feel bad for them, because as sweet and nice as she is, she has a streak in her that scares the holy hell out of me. I only seen it once, and it scared the holy hell out of me. But if I found out that someone even thought for a nanosecond, even that little synapse carried the idea, after she's done whooping your ass, I'm whooping your ass. So
rain, fire, and
oh,
fury.
absolutely. I will be bringing, what did Kurt Russell say in Tombstone? And hell is coming with me. Because I will never proclaim Satan, but you touch my woman and I will bring on fury to you that makes the fires of hell look like a warm summer afternoon. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to, continue to speculate on the civil,
Please.
Bringing the civil first rather than
The criminal.
criminal.
Yeah.
The burden of proof is a lot lower in the civil cases.
True. That is true.
And so whenever you try to take cases like rape to the criminal aspect, there's a whole different slots of proof that you have to bring, within a reasonable doubt, as they say. And the civil cases are totally different. And so it might be a good strategy for those who have been attacked to bring civil cases. So, that's just speculation right there.
That's true. And it is. And also the DA, and I should remember this, the DA is the one that makes the decision to file said charges. It's up to the Houston DA to look at the evidence. So right now it's a civil thing. In 24 hours, the Houston DA could decide that there's more than enough information in this civil suit to bring criminal charges. So this is very early, and this is frightening. But I'll tell you the truth. If Deshaun Watson is guilty of this, his football career is over.
Mm-hmm.
If Deshaun Watson is innocent, and from what Jackson read, there is something nefarious going on, this looks completely different. It changes the landscape of professional football, in my opinion. And it also it ruins all of the progress of women's rights in this country. It's bad enough that I just read that there's a politician in y'all state, Brother Harrington and Jackson. There's a politician there that offered up a new bill that's going to challenge Roe versus Wade.
Oh, I think it passed. It's waiting for the governor to sign it.
All right, so that's going to challenge Roe versus Wade there in Arkansas. And if it passes there, then other states, other red states are going to follow. So with Roe v. Wade still constantly under attack, and other aspects of women's rights being under attack, it is appalling. It is disgusting. It is reprehensible. And it is downright evil if this is a ruse, just because a young Black man attempted to use the power afforded him by his skill to try to control his future. If the conspiracy theories are there.
The McNair family would 100% be forced to sell. 100%. The league would force them to sell. Same thing with the Donald Sterling, who used to own the Clippers.
Yep.
Was forced to sell. The same thing will happen to the McNair family.
Yeah, well, that's the minimum that should happen, because it's like you said, Jackson, that we all know women are not listened to in this country. Women always have to prove that they are the victims, and they shouldn't have to. They should not have to. There is no reason why a piece of crap like Brock Turner should have had his sentence because he's a swimmer and he has a future. What about that young woman's future?
Mm-hmm.
There is no way in hell that I should worry about the women that I know personally every day. There's no reason why I should have to worry. There's no reason why every time I go, I'm the old guy on TikTok. There's no reason why I should go on TikTok and I see videos of a young woman screaming for guys to tell their friends to stop raping women, stop objectifying women. There's no reason why. So this is a story that, we got to watch. We got to watch closely. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to say this before we go to some final thoughts. Men of all races, color, creed, and orientation, respect your female counterparts. I shouldn't have to tell you this. And I'm going to take it one step further. If you don't respect your female counterparts and I get 5 minutes with you, I will gladly catch charges, because that ain't okay. It's not okay.
Bridges dusted off.
Right. Hey, I used to be real good at throwing hands, and I've lost a ton of weight. I ain't got no problem throwing them again. All right. Final thoughts. I want to start with our guests. Future, and I'm going to keep saying it. Future Governor-elect Ricky Dale Harrington Jr. out of Arkansas. Final thoughts from you, sir.
Well, we've talked about a whole lot of things that we can work on in this country, and especially in the realm of sports. And I appreciate Mr. Law for inviting me to come on your show and partake in these conversations that I hope that we all can have in our homes and in other workplaces too. There's all kinds of conversations we have in our workplaces, and we get to a point where we can move past these things. We're slowly doing it, but we can make the changes that we need to make. We just all have to be willing to do it and have the humility to look inside yourself and see where I need to change.
Amen. Courtney.
I'm going to say, one, definitely we should stop victim blaming. That's definitely an issue going on, especially with this case that's about to possibly just everything. One, I want to say just honestly, just shout out to the professional athletes that's really just honestly taking a stand against police brutality and just using their platform to get this out, because it takes a lot. They honestly, especially with the NFL, they're risking a lot. But hey, that risk is going to be worth it at the end of the day. And it has changed, and it has made a lot of changes. A lot of these corporations, big places have started to, just what's the word? just kind of acknowledged all what's going on. So I want to say shout out to them. And yeah, also thank you for allowing me to speak.
Not a problem. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for coming in, standing in, and for all your hard work. Really appreciate you. J Law, final thoughts?
Yeah, one final thing, just again talking about, going back to the difficult conversations that we had, that we have to have in this country, and this is geared, like, I don't know how many Christians watch this, but I am myself, I am a believer, so this is the route that I go with when I talk about this type of stuff with my brothers and sisters in Christ. And I'm going to get a little biblical here too, Mr. Harrington. So just a couple of things that I say. I've used these for things like from why, when I go out in public, why I wear a mask, to why I've been paying extra close attention, to everything that's been going on in this country, the difficult conversations that I've had with friends and family members and other members of the congregation that I attend. One of the verses that I look to is Romans 12:15, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm mostly paraphrasing this. But it's rejoicing with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. And in moments like what happened in the early parts of the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, there was a lot of stuff going on, and I still feel like I don't know everything. I still feel like if I gained any knowledge whatsoever, I went from about knowing this much to about knowing that much, maybe, if you can see my hands. I still know a very minute amount, but there were brothers and sisters in Christ that were hurting because of everything that happened. So the best thing that I could do was to just show support for them and listen to them, and at the very bare minimum, listen, so that way I could understand what my bigger role could be and what I will be called to do in the future. And then another thing, when, for instance, like, and again, this goes with everything that we've been talking about. I look at 1 Corinthians 8 when it talks about, and it's Paul discussing about it. It's kind of funny because he's talking about, like eating meat that is sacrificed to idols, or just eating meat in general, and people being offended by that. This kind of goes back. I was thinking about this when we were talking about the jokes and everything that was going on, and it's like, in that person's heart, maybe they had no malicious intent whatsoever. Like Brian, you were talking about your brothers and everything, or your close friends. But at the same time, there's one of you that hurts. And if that's someone, if that's a brother or sister of mine in my faith, then according to the text here, then I basically need to stop doing that. The idea behind it is that Paul doesn't necessarily believe that it is a sin to eat meat that is, or meat in general, or to eat meat that is sacrificed to idols. But there are other people in his circle that do, or there, other things, because you talk about this, it's like, maybe you don't think alcohol is like a big discussion in congregation, huge Christian communities. And if I'm a person, if I think it's okay to have a drink or two every now and again, but I've got someone that has been struggling with alcohol in the past, they're trying to clean themselves up, it's probably not for the best thing to me to do that. And it talks about verse 13, therefore, when I eat, if what I eat causes my brother to fall into sin, I will never eat meat again, so that I will not cause him to fail. And I know that's talking about that, but I think it can be very applicable to that same type of situation, and opening us up to the fact that we need to be careful with what we say, because with what you say in jest, there's always a bit of truth that hangs into every joke a lot of times. And so while that may be in jest, and you think, there's nothing about that. Well, when it's time to be serious, and there's a moment that you need to be serious, then you probably can't be serious in that situation. So I just wanted to give my final thoughts on that. And in my position and who I am, and I've been planted on this earth, and what I'm called to do with my life, this is just my thought process behind everything.
Wow, Jackson Law took us to church. We got to get him a choir.
Start writing down what he said.
You
I'm
know,
good.
like, whoo, Jackson Law. Yo, I think you and Brother Harrington need to get together and form a church.
That's what happens when I went to a school that was Church of Christ oriented. You know, it's the same denomination that Mr. Harrington, the Harding hat that you're wearing. You know, they are a Church of Christ college, and one of the things that they're all about is participation. And so we had chapel every single day. And when it was my grade's turn, you know, everyone's got to come up with a lesson. They hounded India. They churn out preachers, you know, like a factory.
I said, Jackson Law sound like somebody need to write a song. The only one who could ever need me was the son of a preacher man.
No, see, that's too much. That's too much soul for the Church of Christ. You can't.
Don't worry. It's all right, Jackson. You can still come to the cookout. It's cool. You can still come to the cookout.
Hey, I did. There have been some African American preachers that I've heard speak that are of the Church of Christ, and they've got the soul, and I'm like, I like that so much better. It's like you guys, it's like they sound like they have fun, whereas like the chapels that I went to, it was just like we had to sit there, we can't do anything, no fun.
That's the one thing that I will say, because I was raised Southern Baptist. I'm more of a non-denominational. I guess I'll give my thoughts now too, and I'll keep it short because we went a little bit longer than we usually do. But this is too important to put a time frame on. We all got to live in this world. I recently had to recently go see my dermatologist for a follow-up appointment, and you know, she took a couple of additional samples because she saw some things that worried her. Not so much worried her, but she's more being thorough. And she said after she took, you know, the biopsy, she goes, you know what? With some of the people that come in here, I really wish that they could see this. And I'm thinking to myself, you want them to see my ass? And she's like, no. She was like, I want them to see that the way your skin looks after me taking this sample, their skin looks the exact same when I take the exact same layer off. And I don't understand why they don't get it. And it's true. We have to have these uncomfortable conversations so we can get to the common good goal that this is all just rapping. Inside, we look the same. We have the same blood. We have the same organs. Our blood color is the same. Everything is the same. We are not different. And whether you believe in God, whether you believe in Yahweh, Allah, or a higher being in the pagan faith, we're all created the same. The one thing about every sort of belief is we're the same. No matter who we worship, no matter what we look like, no matter our gender or gender identity or fluidity. At the end of the day, we are flesh, we are blood, we are bone, we are emotion, we are thoughts, and we are feelings. And no matter what team you root for, no matter what city you live in, no matter what, it is time we have these discussions to ensure that there is understanding. The only way that anyone is going to, because there's no way you will ever know the plight of others, but you can educate and understand the plight of others. And just because your ethnicity or your nationality has suffered does not minimize what another's suffering is. So to my Asian brothers and sisters, I stand with you. To my sisters, however you identify, I stand with you. And I pledge that if I am ever out and about and it is within my power to stand up for and protect a marginalized, brutalized, or abused individual, I will stand up for you. You do have an ally in me. Because
Well said.
we all got to live here together.
Mhm.
Thank you to our esteemed guest, the future governor of Arkansas. I will continue to speak that, to put it out there.
Yes.
And once again, where can folks find you? You said that we can find you on Twitter, we can find you on Facebook.
Yes, sir.
It's-
We're working on getting some things. There's a website from a previous campaign. It's still up, rickyharrington.com. You can find some of my previous planks there and read a little bit about my background history on that website. There it will be repurposed for the governor's race because different race, different authority, and different constitutional parameters and functions than being a member of the federal Congress, the United States Senate. The governor is totally different, and the senator is totally different. They're parliamentarians in our legislature. The governor is an administrator, so it's going to be a little bit different. But some of the same principles, some of the same core values, character, integrity, and compassion is what I'm running on.
Amen. You know what? I'm going to start tweeting at Roland S. Martin because he travels to other states where they have the governor races. He's focusing on Missouri right now with their race in I believe it's St. Louis. He's going to be focusing on Virginia. I'm going to start tweeting at him to start focusing on Arkansas as well, because I feel that it's so important right now in the climate that we're in that we need to have individuals that have seats of authority that are there for positive change. That's what we need to do. That's who we need to be in charge. The same old is what got us here.
Mhm.
It's time we do something different. Period. With that being said, thank you everyone for watching. As much as I want to take the norm and apologize for us going long, I'm not going to do that. These were important discussions that needed to be had, and this is my show. I was told by Trey Daubert I could say and do what I want, so I'm gonna do it. With that being said, I got to take it old school. He's Jackson Law. I'm Brian Tann. This is the Tanndemonium Sports Show, and we'll see you next week here on Vendetta Sports Media. Later.